Hello everybody, welcome to Tea with Fee. Today I'm talking to somebody who I met quite a few years ago now, and apparently it was her first ever session with this particular mode of working. And no more ado, welcome Viv Adcock. Lovely to see you here, Viv. Thank you so much for coming on here today.
Yeah, and thank you for inviting me, Fee. It's just, you know, same thing. I've watched you over the last few years just go from strength to strength and be more of an invitation. And yeah, I remember very clearly the first meeting. It was a Conscious Horse, Conscious Rider class. And you're right, it was the very first one I did. And I was quietly, absolutely in my head going, oh my God, can I do this? And we only had a few people. Good. Yeah, and that was a phenomenal class. And that for me was the turning point of, my God, is this real? Can I really do this? Is this really what the animals are talking about? And the proof, the physical proof that they gave us that day, I mean, you were there watching what was occurring with these couple of horses. For me, I walked away just myself. I was blown away. I was like, my God, this really is real. This is happening. I'm not just pretending or dreaming like I used to as a kid. This communication and this contribution and this communion with the animals is actually real. It's palpable. And with horses, it's totally visible. Well, with all animals, but that day was very, very special for me.
Yeah, and I remember it very clearly because I've been invited to this lovely lady's place, and Viv was going to be working with her horses. And as she was working with this horse, beautiful horse, but very wounded. Now, if I believe this horse had been caught in a flood, one of those horrendous floods in Queensland that we get here in Australia. And Viv was working with this particular horse, and there was another one at the very, very end of the field. And this horse, as she was working this particular, and let's go into more detail in a second, Viv, about what you were actually being and doing with this kind of communion. It can only be called a communion in my point of view. This horse, the horse that she was working on, the other one walked slowly all the way up the field as she was working, and probably about, 30 meters, maybe more, maybe less. This horse, the other horse, sat down and put its nose on the earth. And I don't know what that actual position means, but everyone there was kind of like blown away. And so maybe you can tell us more about that, Viv. You know, so what is Conscious Horse, Conscious Rider? I do know that there's only a few of you in the world, so you're pretty sought after these days.
Yeah, and yes, I facilitate classes in Conscious Horse, Conscious Rider, or even individual sessions to people. And also there's another class called Talk to the Animals, which has shown up so far as working with smaller animals, and the Conscious Horse, Conscious Rider obviously is for people that like horses and even people that are frightened of horses. So yeah, that particular day, I'm really grateful to hear your recalling of it, because that was pretty much exactly what I saw. And the story was with these horses were, I don't know, a few months earlier they had been caught in this flood, and they were in a herd of horses, I think about 10 other horses, and 8 of the horses drowned and died. And this horse that we were working with and the horse at the other end of the paddock were the 2 that survived. So you know, you can imagine the kind of trauma that they went through with their own lives, and then just the 2 of them being left and wondering where their paddock mates were. So this lady had called me to go and help with these horses because she knew that the other one that was at the end of the paddock was severely traumatized. And I went, great, you know, I went in with my point of view of, right, well, we'll work on that horse. And of course, horses, like children, they've got their own mind. And the other horse, when we walked up towards these, the owner couldn't get close to this second horse. And yeah, the more we tried to catch this horse or be with it, it was very, very clear that it did not want us to have anything to do with it. And yet the other horse walked straight up to us and literally stood in front of me. And I said, okay, I guess this is the horse we're going to work with. So we brought the horse back, that particular horse. We took that horse back, and that's where we were standing and we were working. And yeah, exactly what you said. We were just working with asking this horse if it would be willing to release the fight-flight, the survival mode it was stuck in, and the trauma. And as we started using the tools of access and just asking this horse questions, and working with the group to perceive what each person received from this horse energetically. And, you know, sometimes people get verbal messages or they have a sensation in their body. The whole group were receiving some kind of communication with this horse. And I was inviting their invitation, what they had become aware of. And as you said, you know, within 20 minutes, half an hour, this horse slowly worked its way up. It was very, very close to us. And it did. It just lay down, and it lay down with such an exhaustion and almost a groan as it laid down. And the more we worked with the other horse, this horse eventually just completely flaked out on the grass. And after maybe an hour or two, I actually just said to the group, look, I'm just going to see if I can get near this horse. He may not want me there. And I think you also went up during the lunch break and sat with him, and he just allowed us to stroke him. And, you know, it still makes me a bit emotional now to think that this horse was so frightened and traumatized that initially we couldn't get near him. And then here we were at lunchtime sitting with him, laying down, and a laying down position for horses is a very vulnerable position. So for him to feel that he could relax and let go, and he was yawning and he did this really weird stretch. And it was just, for me, I'm like, okay, if I ever doubted that this weird, wacky stuff works, it was like, well, there's the physical proof. We saw it with our own eyes that this is what was going on. And this was with just 2 horses. So what else is possible? Exactly.
So can you tell us what you were actually doing, or what you were actually being with?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? Yeah. How do you explain it? So animals don't have a point of view. So how I regard animals, and this is just my point of view, animals don't require to be in a stressed situation. They don't require to live in a stressful environment or to be stressed themselves, because in the animal kingdom, that sends an energetic message out to any predators that there is a weakness, there's a fragility, there's a shakiness that the herd or the pack or whoever it is feels under threat. And if you've got one horse in a herd that is having this kind of energy, and remember these were 2 horses that were both emitting this energy, they were stuck in that fight-flight mode, and they know the danger that it can create for the 2 of them. So I think I'll do my best to try and explain it, but it was like just being in that space of allowance, that being the space of question. My dog's just come up to say hello.
Can we see?
Sure. I think she's just walking away as we go.
Yeah, because that's another amazing story that I can't wait to get onto. But please carry on with what you were talking about. So I'll just say right now that what we're actually, Viv and I are both Access Consciousness certified facilitators. That means that we live with tools, verbal and body processes that create more ease and change people's worlds. And I know from Viv and I, both of us, our worlds have changed in this completely using the tools, because when you facilitate people with the tools, you have to use the tools yourself to work with. It's just a way of being in the world and create so much more ease. So just explain.
That's beautifully put. And just to tie that into the question that you asked me about what was I being with the horses, a lot of the times we don't know what we're being, because we're just being it like we're breathing. We are being an energy that is calm, present, with no point of view and no judgment. So here I was initially walking up, right, I'm going to work with this horse because this is what the owner had asked for and wanted, because she could see the trauma that this horse was in. Mm-hmm. And yet it was very clear within minutes, even walking into the paddock, and it was a big paddock, but this horse turned its back on us and walked further away. So there was an energy that the horse was going, don't come near me, I don't feel safe, I don't want you to come near me. But the other horse stood in and said, hey, you can work with me, and you don't know it yet, but this horse is going to receive healing and change and lightness and a space through me. And I didn't get that to start with. So yeah, I don't know if I can answer that question about it's a being, it's a presence. And the fact that we're there, standing there with the animal, that we have no agenda. It's not like, right, I'm going to fix this and we're going to change it. It's just being genuinely being that curiosity of, hey, can I contribute to you? Can I be something for you that maybe you have disconnected from because of this trauma, and remind you how that you prefer to function?
Yeah, and also I was having a conversation earlier today with someone and talking about, how we can actually commune, because, I'm sure everybody's so aware of the crazy chaos that's going on in the world at the moment, or havoc. And we were talking about to actually, if we begin to commune, if we become aware of our infinite being, our bodies inside our spirit, our infinite being, rather than what we have been doing up until now, which is almost like shoving our spirits inside our bodies. To me, what you're telling me is that the space that we create, the more infinite, the more space we create in consciousness, the more the animals will be in communion with us. Because that's my question. My next question was going to be, what do you see? What's your chief target to create in the world with humans and animals, and what's beyond your wildest dreams, Viv, about what you'd like to see in the world with that?
Great question. Yes, because generally speaking, before Access, I had no peace in my life. I was stressed constantly. I was worried. I didn't feel I was good enough. I was constantly working on myself or reading books or whatever, because I thought there was something inherently wrong with me. And yet the flip side of that was I would seek animals out, whether it was just the neighbour's horse over the fence, stroking it, or just being with friends' dogs, or just hanging out with my dog, or even just being in nature, going for a walk in the bush and observing and being present with that gentle energy of space. And look, what if this could be how life really is? And so yes, with the tools of Access, that energy has become more of where I function from more and more. So it's chicken or the egg. Do the animals invite us to this when they're not in a stress situation, when they're just being there? Do they invite us to this and help facilitate us to let go of stress? How many times do you see a tropical fish tank in a doctor's surgery or a dentist's surgery, or animals, dogs especially, going into hospitals now to help palliative care, or animals being taken into old people's homes? So that is becoming more, it's becoming more obvious in everyday life. People are becoming aware of the contribution that animals are to us. So my target would be to help people that, they might be frightened of animals or dogs or horses or whatever, or they just see them as a pet or as almost a machine. A lot of people use animals for sport, and they just see them as a machine. They don't see them as a sentient being that they are and what they can contribute. So my big dream is to kind of debunk any myths that people have, and for the people that are interested, to show them there is a totally different relationship and a totally different contribution that they can be for us and we can be for them, to contribute to this greater level of oneness, this consciousness, this peace that most animals function from.
Yeah, so I get that so much, and I've got such a communion with animals. My little dog Dash, she was 18 and a half.
Wow.
I'm sure little doggy spirits took over her body so she could last so long or something. It was amazing. And she was such a contribution to me. And I miss her more than everyone else that's popped across the other side. I miss her more than any of them. It's extraordinary. They've got this silence. And she used to sit on my lap sometimes, and she would ooze this kind of, I can only put it was like pure love or communion, and I would get it so much. And it was only when I was really, really actually fully receiving that, it was only the past 6 months maybe of her life that I actually allowed myself to receive. And then she left. It was almost like, oh, you've got that now, I can go. It was quite amazing, actually. But that's one thing that, and I know to me it's a very interesting topic, because I get that we create our own reality. So where do we go when we witness cruelty and torture with animals? Because it can be very difficult, because I know that you probably prefer animals to other human beings and stuff, and I do too. So maybe that was a projection.
Certain people. Yeah, no, I mean, again, with the tools, I loved being with people, and I am quite a people person and quite enjoy social interactions. And then, of course, life happens and you have a few bruises and bumps and you get a bit burnt, and it's like, I don't know if I'm so game to go back out there again. And that's when we seek nature, or we seek the ocean, or we seek animals to try and, whether we're conscious of it or not, whether we're cognitive of it or not, we're kind of seeking to reconnect to that part of ourselves that we have almost shut off and cut, you know. And animals are a great way, small children, babies and animals are a great way to reconnect with that, because they allow us to drop those barriers, and they allow us, even if it's just temporarily, to be present again and receive, just like you were saying, receive that genuine gentleness, vulnerability and kindness that these animals desire to be for us, beyond being a pet or being a way of making money.
Yeah.
And we also, my husband and I, foster greyhounds from the racing industry. So talking about cruelty, because I am such an animal.
This is an amazing story, guys. You know, I saw photographs of when Viv actually first got these 2 dogs. Viv, it's been, how long ago did you get them, and how long has this been, this journey? They're healing, and you've also transformed with this work that you've been doing with them. Yeah, so tell us about that.
Very much so. So originally I had a dog that was a bit of a Heinz 57, and she, as a very young puppy, developed, well, we didn't realise, but she had a bone condition, a bone problem that was through the genetics apparently. And anyway, our very good friend is our vet, and she said, look, I'm really sorry, but by the time this dog is 2, you're going to have this leg taken off, and it might be another joints, and she might have a very short life. And because of that dog, this is going back 11, 12 years ago, because of her, she got me into all of this, because I went, I don't think this is happening to my dog. You know, what else is possible?
Yeah, that was
anyway. She passed
into it. Yeah,
she passed, and I was actually overseas when she passed, and I knew that she was going. And when I got back, I said to my husband, I can't live where we live. We're on a couple of acres, and I just said, I can't live here without animals, without the energy of animals being here. But I can't take a dog on full time because I travel so much. Long story short, we ended up finding this group that foster greyhounds, and they're always, or they rescue greyhounds, and they're always looking for foster people, foster families. And within 2 or 3 days of us meeting these people, we had our first greyhound. So that was pretty much this time last year, so 12 months ago. And in that time, I think in the first 6 weeks, we took on and rehabilitated and rehomed about 6 or 7 greyhounds. They came, they transformed so quickly and found home so quickly that even the group are kind of going, how is this happening?
Wow.
And then we got one very special dog who had come from a medical lab where he had been experimented on. And basically, I think he went into this medical lab at the age of 6 months, and we got him when he was 2 years old, and he was an absolute basket case. He didn't know how to use his body. All his muscles had atrophied. He was terrified of people. He was bald down here. He's got a piece missing out of his tongue. So, you know, talk about cruelty. And it's like I had to work using the tools to get over my point of view of, you know, this shouldn't happen to an animal. In this day and age, we shouldn't be experimenting on dogs. And yet there was part of my brain going, yeah, but this is possibly people are learning from what this animal is contributing. And I went, and I found it really interesting to try and reconcile that it feels unnecessary that we're doing it to live animals. But then on the other hand, I'm going, yeah, but these dogs, sometimes they're actually used as blood donors. So apparently the greyhound's blood is one of the most compatible blood for all other dogs. So sometimes they keep these dogs to use them as blood donors, to be able to use that blood to save other dogs' lives. So then the other part of my brain goes, well, I really get that. I really get that. I get the contribution. And so the journey with them has actually, I mean, we know that there is horrific abuse out there.
Can I ask you, so that's what I often, you know, get asked questions about this, about, you know, it's horrendous, the heinous crimes of animal torture and this kind of thing, you know, like blood sports, you know, in the Middle Ages, and bullfighting and cruelty and kids with, you know, so many things so how do you approach that? Because I know with the Access tools, everything's an interesting point of view, and are these animals actually choosing to be a contribution so that people choose something different, or what is that?
Yeah. So great. Thank you, Fiona. It's There is, I had a conversation with somebody recently about the greyhounds because they spark so much conversation when we're out walking. People's awareness of these animals and what they go through is exponentializing. So they're ambassadors. How I see it, it's like these, in Australia, greyhound racing has had quite a lot of publicity in the last 12 to 18 months, you know, exposing the cruelty of live baiting and all this other stuff that goes on with trainers. And it's not every trainer, but, you know, you get to hear the worst of it. And I've completely forgotten what I was going to say.
About them being
what did you just ask me?
About them being a conscious.
Yeah. And so I look at these animals as being ambassadors for awareness, especially Cooper. You know, when people ask, we always get stopped. Oh, are these greyhounds? And they're from the racing industry. And when we tell people the story, we don't go into the wrongness and the terribleness and the awfulness of what it is. We give them the information so they're educated that this happens. But it's like, yeah, but look at what this dog has created. It's created somehow, finding its way to my husband and I, finding its way to this paradise that we literally create for the dogs, the home we provide for them, the gentleness, the kindness, the healing that we try and contribute to them, and the space that we allow them to actually get over their stuff and become happy and be joyous and be a dog again. So
what was one of the sort of chief tools that you used with the dogs? So you were using the tools of access consciousness and conscious horse, conscious rider. There's all these classes, guys, that are kind of like offshoots of access consciousness. You get lots of different talk to the animals, talk to the entities, lots of different things. And so conscious horse, conscious rider is originally from Gary Douglas, isn't it? He's the founder of Access Consciousness 26 years ago. And he's got basically an obsession with horses, their particular horses. Can you remember the name of the actual particular horses that he adores? I can't remember the actual name.
They're called Costa Sensei de Pasos. They're Costa Rican horses.
Awesome. So he works with them, and people fly over to Houston and they go to work with him. And this is what you did, wasn't it, Viv? You actually went to a conscious horse, conscious rider. That was quite a few years ago.
Yeah.
And so you've been using...
Yeah, I've actually... You go.
With your greyhounds also, is that correct?
Yeah, and look, the tools are applicable across the board, whether it's working with animals, working with children, working with people with financial problems, working with people with health problems, anything. The tools are applicable and applicable across the board. I haven't yet come across anything that I haven't been able to use the tools with. So I also have a clinic in Queensland where I work with people. So, you know, you're right, there are so many different facets to where these tools can contribute. So Conscious Horse, Conscious Rider is one that I've used. Talk to the Animals is another one I've used. So the tools are multi-dimensional in that respect. They can help you change anything in your life that's not working. And I think for me, adding the animals are an extra contribution because the animals are actually facilitating me to facilitate. So it's like I've got an extra team on board when I do classes. It's not me, I've got the animals contributing to people's awareness in their own journey. Yeah.
So your stories of change, I mean, you've obviously witnessed an awful lot now over the years. So what would be the top couple of stories that, you know, stories as it were, you know, the transformational lives? You're doing the greyhounds and you're working with horses that also, aren't you? So what have you come across that's really rocked your world and kind of sort of quantum leapt you into?
So I'm going to kind of combine two of your questions because you asked me, you know, which tools do I use? And the bars, you know, when we first get a new dog in, they come in all shapes and sizes. They're often starved, skinny, terrified. They've never been in a house before. They've never really been in a domestic situation. So everything is new to them. And one of the first things that I do with my husband is we'll run bars, which is a process of access consciousness. And we'll work on each other. You know, I'll run my husband's bars, which in a really brief conversation, it's like a defrag for your computer, or you're emptying all the files out of the filing cabinet that are junk that you don't need anymore. So basically, I will run my husband's bars, and the dogs either come and lie at the end of the bed with us, or they'll be in the room next to us. And there's one particular dog that we have right now, Lucy, whose nickname is Bing Bing, because that's what she's like. She's ding! She's just full of joy and full of energy and exuberance. She's so glad to be alive. And
so
she
you
came in
on each other's bars, because dogs don't have bars, but that creates an energy that is a contribution to them. Guys, if you haven't had your bars run yet, please find somebody in your area, somewhere in the world. You will find somebody that can run the 32 points on the head. At the least, you'll feel like you've had the best massage in the world, or your entire life will change. Trust me, it's true. Carry on, Viv. Yeah, so
I can definitely. Yeah, so because they come in, so Lucy's story was she'd been in the racing industry. She was drastically underweight. You could see every vertebrae on her back. Her hip bones were sticking up. And she basically, when we first got her, she stood in the house trembling, staring at the wall for about 3 days. I was away when my husband first got her, and by the time I came home, I said, hey, can I run your bars? And Lucy, by that stage, had kind of started to settle, being in the house and knew her bed. And so anyway, I was running Ross's bars, and she came and laid at the bottom of the bed along with Cooper, the dog that was the medical lab dog. And they both completely zonked out, a bit like that horse in the paddock, because Lucy was so wired. She was so terrified. It was like she was on adrenaline, and she couldn't switch off. She wouldn't relax. She wouldn't sleep. She was just on. And anyway, so the next morning I get up. So this is the dog that was terrified, wouldn't make eye contact with you, trembling, wouldn't eat. Mm-hmm. The next morning I went outside. We've got like a little playpen for them that they sleep in at night right next to our bedroom. I opened the gate to let them out. She came tearing out, and she picked up my shoe. I had a shoe at the back door. She went to the back door, picked it up, put it in her mouth, and she was running around the garden, throwing this shoe midair and playing and running around. And I just sat there and bawled my eyes out. Well, it still gets me. You know, from being this terrified, trembling, couldn't look at you mess, literally overnight. And I'm like, okay, well, what's changed? Was it the bars? Was it whatever I was? And we weren't doing it for the dogs. We weren't doing it because it'll help the dogs. I just ran my husband's bars. And for me, I'm like, oh my God, everything is energy. The animals, their only language is energy. They learn to speak English or Spanish or French, but that was absolutely, and I went and grabbed my phone and I was videoing her backwards and forwards. It was absolutely incredible. And Cooper, the other dog, gave her the space to just run around the back garden, and it was like, yay, I'm alive. Oh my God, I could feel so happy. And it was like her character just came out overnight, and she felt safe to be able to express a level of joy. Her tail was up, she was wagging, and she was just so full of joy.
That is extraordinary. You know, I mean, that's like miracle stuff, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, it was a bit like watching that horse in the paddock. I'm like, okay, well, if I've ever doubted this stuff works, wow. Yeah. So that's one of the tools, but there's two other ones that I use. The other one is expanding their zone. So often, because these animals are traumatized, their zone has collapsed. So what I mean by that is, as a person, we tend to have a sense of personal space. We kind of have a zone around us that we're comfortable with people staying at a certain distance. But if they come into our face, or we feel claustrophobic. So often when the animals arrive, their zone is completely collapsed. And it's like, if you can imagine somebody who's claustrophobic being in a lift or in a confined space. So we expand their zone. That's one of the first things that I do, because they're terrified. It's like they've been through a lot of shock and trauma. Even leaving the racing industry, as terrible as it might have been, it's still traumatic for them to leave and come to us. It's such a different contrast.
Yeah, wow.
So expanding their zone takes out some of that anxiousness and takes out some of that, the hypervigilance and the reaction.
How do you expand their zone, Viv? I mean, I know how to expand.
So it's very, very simple.
The people that are watching BBC, how would they expand their zone, the ones that don't know?
Yeah, so if you imagine a balloon it hasn't been blown up yet. So imagine when you sense your animal, you can sense if they're fractious and anxious, If they're edgy, if they're jumpy, if they're reactive, you can ask, okay, has your zone collapsed? Has something occurred that's made your zone collapsed? And it's literally, you get that balloon and you literally, with your hands energetically, just imagine you're pulling, it's like you're blowing up a balloon. So if you imagine an energetic bubble even around them, and ask the animal, how large do you require your zone? Even if you just make it a little bit bigger to start with, you'll see this instant peace and calm, which is their natural state, will start to come in. Yeah. And they'll relax more. They won't be as uptight. So yeah, that's a really simple tool. Yeah, so they're the two main ones. I've got a handful of other ones, but they're the two main ones that I use.
So when you ran your husband's bars, there was an expansion of energy with both of you that was received, which created the dynamic change overnight. So it was literally
yes.
the bar. Yeah, which is amazing. And neuroscience actually, sorry, Viv, there's a neuroscientist that's actually studied the bars, MRIing people gifting and receiving the bars, and he said he's seen nothing like it. We're waiting for information to come out about that. I'm not even sure we're meant to talk about it at the moment because we're waiting for that. But that shows so much, Viv, about the bars, just by you actually doing that and that happening. That's such a telltale.
And just nipping back to one of the questions you began with, it's like with the horses, can you explain what you were doing or being? It's like, well, I was asking the horse questions. I wasn't doing to it. And this is for me, when I first started learning these tools, I'd been doing, and not actually asking the person or the animal in front of me, hey, what do you require? Yeah. What is it that you would like to change? What contribution can I be to you? Imagine being in a relationship where you're just being told all the time what to do. There's no communication, there's no two-way street. It's I'm dominant and I'm the boss and I'm going to tell you what to do, that's how most people that work with animals are educated, that I'm the boss and you have to do what I do and I'm not going to let you get away with it, rather than if you treated your child or your husband or your wife like that, good luck.
That's so true, isn't it? Like, and what strikes me, what you're saying is there's no space then, which is about the zone space. And there's no space. I mean, and it's funny, it's like, who does actually like being told what to do? Unless you're in a compromise, you actually enjoy compromising situations, Who actually does enjoy being told
Not me.
Nobody does, really, do they? The majority of people who don't like they're told what to do, they can become kind of passive aggressive. They kind of, which an animal can become quite sort of introvert, but then have that, because I've met dogs that kind of stare at you and it's almost like, don't come near me. It's like, then they won't attack you, but they've got that vibe, like you wouldn't go near them. Actually, I must say to you, I must ask you a question. We were staying down we stayed with friends down near Gosford, and when we got out of the car, my husband and I, we got out of the car and the two guys said, ignore the dog. So of course you're going to ignore the dog, but our assumptions were that once you've ignored the dog for a little while, the dog's cool, Anyway, so we went to say hello to the dog after a little while, and it was like, it was extraordinary. And they said that even when they go to bed and the dog sleeps on a mat in their room, when they go up to the bathroom, the dog is growling at them. So I was working a little bit with the dog, and I was asking questions with the dog. And even, because I know that the first thing that you say to an animal is, are you who you are? Is there an entity there? Don't you ask them if there's something else in there? Is that the first question you use?
It's
so closed down. It was so closed down. I think I would have needed a long time to have actually shifted anything and worked with that dog, So maybe one for you.
Yeah. yeah, but even just you acknowledging that dog as a being, you know, imagine you've been ignored your entire life. You've been ignored, not listened to, not taken notice of. Nobody's, you know, giving you the time of day. You're just this, you know, excess person. And then all of a sudden somebody goes, hey, Fiona, hi, nice to meet you. Just that begins the change. Yeah. You know, I mean, this dog could have had years of this behavior, you know, but just the fact that you have gone, hey, hi, I'm a different person. I'm trying to reach you. I get you. I see you. Even that is an acknowledgement of the being, and that can create massive change.
It's really interesting you say that, because this couple really love and adore their dog. You know, it's plain to see that they really adore them, and yet it's approaching that being in there with a totally different way, isn't it? A totally different set of awarenesses. Yeah. So,
well, you've raised a really, really good point, because we tend to treat animals like people. They're not people. We tend to show love like we would our family or our friends or our children. And so this is where, for animals, we can send mixed messages to them and not learn to speak dog or cat or horse or whatever it is. And we speak our language, and we can often create confusion and problems like this because we're not aware of what we're letting them do, or we're not. So, you know, it sounds to me a little bit, could this dog have a bit of a, you know, a hierarchy confusion, having the dog sleeping in the bedroom, or it, you know, that it feels to me that could be what may be going on amongst a couple of other things. But again, it's like one thing that Ross and I do is we don't let our animals on the furniture, and that is just our personal choice. If you let your animals on the furniture, no problem. But for us, we are very clear with these dogs that this is your position in the pack. This is where you're allowed. This is your comfort. And I think once we start letting the dogs be more of the family and be on the couch or sit on you know, furniture or sleep on beds or whatever, it can, not all the time, but it can create a bit of confusion as to where the dog is supposed to be in the pecking order. Dogs like to know where they are in the pack. That's where they most feel comfortable. And if we're not willing to be the leader, which is another massive topic, if we're not willing to be that pack leader, they don't feel safe. And if you have a more dominant dog, they will constantly challenge you to see if you are worth them putting their lives into your hand, because that's what they do. They choose their leader based on certain energies and knowing that they can trust that that leader has their back.
Wow.
So if that leader is shaky or they step in and out of being a leader, any dominant dog will go, shit, do I need to step up here? Do I need to challenge this leader that we've chosen? And so that could be, you know, maybe that might be what's going on for this dog. You know, who knows?
That's interesting. I mean, I've had dogs all my life as a child and stuff. And one of my boyfriends in Switzerland, he had a dog called Lucky. This dog found him per chance. And he used to say to me, a happy dog is a disciplined dog, which is what you're saying, a dog that knows its boundaries, a dog that knows its position. And
place, yes.
Yeah, he was a whitewater river rafter, this guy. I was with him for 4 years, and he would go out on a fully rapid river with all rapids and everything. And Lucky was a whitewater river rafting dog. He would actually go out on the raft with Benno, and he knew the river so well that he would actually, because it was one of those big rubber rafts, you know, that used to take about 12 people on it, he would be on literally all fours on the edge of the raft. And when the rapids arrived, he would actually get back down and sit in the boat. Because he knew where they were. I mean, it was amazing, actually. Lucky, yeah. And it used to freak me out. I went a couple of times on it, but to me it was like, yeah, I've done my water tricks, you know. But it was amazing. But Lucky, I mean, and he was a one-man dog. He was an absolute one-man dog. And are all dogs one-man dogs, really? Or are animals like that? Or what is that?
I would say yes and no. I mean, I know our situation with the foster hounds is different because we haven't had them from puppies. We haven't raised them. They haven't been with our family 24/7. But the two dogs we've got right now, Cooper is definitely a one-man dog. He's bonded with my husband, and they are inseparable. You know, because Cooper was such a basket case when he first arrived. The fact that he was willing to trust people again is amazing. But the bond that he's built with my husband, and my husband's great with dogs, he just has this natural communion with them. He just knows how to be with them. He reads them, he understands them, and he bees an energy that the dogs respect. Same with children. So yeah, he has embodied, maybe he's embodied being the pack leader, but none of it is through unkindness or cruelty or yelling or smacking or anything that we, you know, maybe we had that done to us as kids, because you don't see another dog smacking another dog. You don't see it yelling. Yeah, they might get a growl or whatever, but so it's learning their language. And if you need to correct your dog, study dog language, watch them together and start mimicking that. You're going to have a much more rapid response straight away when you start to communicate to a dog, for instance, as another dog would, as its mum would.
Yeah.
So yes, Cooper is definitely a one-man dog, whereas Lucy just loves people. She will go to anybody. We'll be walking and she'll just make a sudden, I need to go and say hello to that person. She makes a beeline for certain people. Wow. And she'll just walk straight up in front, stand there and just lean into their legs. Yeah. So she's the kind of dog that I would say, if you love her and you pat her and you give her the space to be hurt, she would be anybody's dog. Yeah. You know, she's not fussy. She's such a, she just loves to share the love. Lucy loves to share the love.
Yeah. Wow. So it's access consciousness really does take communion. It creates more ease with people and animals. It creates more ease in our worlds, our lives. And just as you were talking now, you know, it's very hot up here at the moment. So, and the rains are yet to come to fully fill the creeks and the rock pools, you know, but I was sort of going, so when can we have you up here at Mount Walsh Bush Retreat to actually create? And you know what? We're not allowed cats on you know, because it's basically a nature reserve. We can have dogs, and I wonder what it would take at the camp, you know, our area there where we do the classes. I wonder what it would take for people to come with their creatures and actually create a class up here, you know, doing that. It would be amazing. Yeah.
I would love to. You know, I've seen some of your pictures, the wildlife, because you don't have to have a domestic animal. It's even, you know, to use the same tool with wildlife, with goannas, with birds, with kangaroos, with, you know, you can play it with non-domestic, and that's even more fun to tap into the, you know, the animal kingdom, the wild animal kingdom, and start using some of these tools.
Oh, we have stories about, we rescued some kookaburras, you know, baby kookaburras that obviously their brothers and their siblings had thrown them out the nest, you know, really high. And my husband picked them up, and we've got amazing stories with the kookaburras. And every morning, you know, these birds are so confiding, considering everything was eaten for so long. We've got, like, at the moment, we've got a little bit of bird seed, just, you know, just because. And, you know, every morning we get about 60 firetail finches come in. And this morning we were laughing because the bush turkey came in, you know, this huge bush turkey and these little birds. And we get we've got about 158 species of birds so far on this land, you know. And people say, do you have animals? And I say, yes, lace monitors, snakes, wallaby, you know. And,
welcome to Australia.
I know, and it really is. And I know that I'm in their territory. They are not in mine, you know. And I think maybe that's why we've got such a good, you know, we are caretakers of the land also. We're caretaking the land. It's not our land. We're caretaking it, as I think with the animals, you know, we caretake the animals, but I think in so many ways they caretake us, don't they? You know.
Well, they do their best too.
Yeah. So what's next for you, Viv?
Yeah. So in regards to workshops, I mean, the thing I love about the Talk to the Animals workshop is we invite you to bring your animals with you. Awesome. On day 2. So generally your Talk to the Animals class is 2 days. Sometimes I'll do an introductory night the night before for people that might want to just come and see what it's about or they're curious. So the first day is we learn the tools. We go through learning animal communication. We look at a few of the tools that we've already touched on today, plus a few others that you get to take home and use with your animals straight away. And then day 2, you get to bring your pet with you. We had tortoises and all sorts of stuff come to class. And you get to practice with your animal and with other animals and just ask questions and start to, like I said earlier, you connect with them in a totally different way. And so the reward of that, the connection, the communion that is actually created, because the animals invite us to be a totally different energy. They invite us to be present. They invite us to be present with everything around us. Animals are connected to everything. They don't cut off their awareness and get involved with their mobile phone or Facebook, or they are present with everything and they live in communion with each other. There's no judgment or separation. Oh, you're a goanna. Oh, well, you're a bird. There is none of that. Yeah. They live in total harmony together and they work together. Everything works together. So workshop-wise, I'd love to come up and do a class with you. It would be phenomenal to share these tools with you. And I know your environment is absolutely beautiful. I've seen photographs.
Yeah.
And I have a 2.5-day Talk to the Animals class coming up in Rockhampton in March, the middle of March.
Awesome.
And I've got a few other ones. Yeah, I've got a few other ones. I'm doing some introductory talks, and then I'm heading over to, so I spend 6 months of the year in the Northern Hemisphere, where I teach Conscious Horse, Conscious Rider, Talk to the Animals, and a few other of the access classes while I'm over there. So yeah, if anybody's interested out there.
When are you off to Europe again?
Yeah, so end of May, I head to the UK, and for the last few years I've done classes in Norway. Where else have I been? Poland. I'm going to Hungary and Poland again next year, probably Norway, UK. Cool. And if anybody's got any invitations, I'm more than happy to travel. I just love sharing these tools.
Well, I might
and
see
facilitating what consciousness I can.
I'm back off to Europe at the end of May also, for a few months.
How long are you over there for?
Probably till the very end of August, September. What's taking us back this time, although I have got classes in Lugano in Switzerland, we've been invited to a wedding on Lake Como and we couldn't refuse. So yeah, it's like Lake Como. Even my husband's going. He's off to the Hebrides to record birdsong up in the Hebrides with friends before. So yeah, we're just complete nature buffs. We love it. And what else is possible? Are you going to South Africa in January?
In this 10 seconds, no.
Right.
And anything is open. Anything is open to change. I went this year and it was absolutely phenomenal. The animals, the land, the environment, the people that work there, they're all there because they love the animals. They love and appreciate and grateful for what they've got, and they realize how precious it is. And this is the thing about the other part of my message is, you know what if we could be in communion with animals way more, rather than just killing them for their horns or slaughtering them to go, look at me, I'm a hero, I've killed a lion or something. It's like, the good thing about that is it's waking people up. When Cecil the lion was killed, how much outrage and how much awareness did that create with pictures of him being shown everywhere?
Yes.
And so if you're going to South Africa, anybody that's watching this, great choice. It is phenomenal. Do as many safaris as you can. So you can do safaris early in the morning before class, after class, and I did a couple of nighttime safaris as well, which were incredible. And you really use your awareness because all you've got is the spotlight, and it's like, okay, where are you? Show me where to point. And I actually had the spotlight. And the driver was going, oh my God, how do you keep... We found rhinos, we found, elephants, we found all sorts of stuff. And she said, how are you doing this? I'm just asking them to tell me where they are.
It's like looking at you going, these people, they're magicians.
Oh yeah, and all the safari drivers that took us out, they were going, I don't know what you guys are doing, but we've seen more animals on the safaris with you in the last week than we have in the last 6 months. They just want to come out and show themselves off to us because we receive the contribution. We're grateful for them. It's like we have a different relationship with them. It's like, wow, you are absolutely beautiful. Thank you for showing yourself to us, because we receive them differently.
Yeah, and that's
that's my spiel on South Africa.
That's what?
That's my spiel on South Africa. Whether you go for the 7-day class with Gary Douglas or whether you go for a safari.
Yeah, I'm really pulled to go, actually. It's that receiving, I think, that's not done in this reality. And I get that that's what Access Consciousness, in all its wonderful tools and all its whatever it is, it's actually our ability to receive the tools. Actually, every single tool in Access Consciousness is all about you being more present, able to receive more of who you actually be, isn't it? Really, that's really the tools. Every tool is actually getting you more present to recognize who you actually are, how phenomenally powerful and potent we are as creatures on this world, so that we can actually create more communion and have more coherence and harmony with each other, with the earth, which is kind of like, that's another topic entirely, but to actually really have more ease with each other and the animals and the earth, you know. So before we go and before we wrap up, Viv, if there's anything else, thank you so much. I've so enjoyed this communion with you. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to anybody that's going to watch this in the future?
Yeah, whether you have your own pets or whether you don't have pets, but you love animals or you're curious, just ask them to show themselves to you. You know, where are you? Will you show yourself to me? Because you're consciously going, where are you? I would love to appreciate you. And I was walking out the front of my house just here a while ago, and I was walking out to work, you know, a little bit busy and a bit preoccupied, and I heard this really quiet oi. And I turned around, and under one blade of grass was this tiny, tiny frog, about half the size of your little fingernail. And he was on the underneath of the blade of grass in the middle of the lawn.
That's amazing.
And I found him out of the couple of acres of grass that we have. And I went, wow, thank you so much for showing us. He was tiny. He was tiny.
Wow.
So ask them to show themselves to you, and be grateful for them, appreciate them. I think, you know, people just take animals for granted. Australia, we're surrounded with bird life and insects and critters everywhere, and yet how often do we really appreciate the birds? How often do we take the time to look up at the sky and watch them flying together, or on the water, or in the trees? So what could you receive from nature today? What could you receive from the animals that maybe you haven't been willing to receive before?
Yeah.
And you said it beautifully, by the way. I just want to finish with this. When you were talking about your dog lying on your lap, that gift of truly receiving with no point of view, and the dog going, finally, she's getting it, you know. And we're generally too busy with our lives, and it's pat, 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 walk, 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 feed the dog, and there's no genuine, even if it's just 30 seconds of being totally present with your cat or your dog or whatever, and just touching them with absolute presence, stroking them with absolute presence, nice and, you know, as slowly as you can, feel every hair under your hand and connect with their being.
Yes.
And that changes so much for you. They feel received, you feel contributed to. It's magic.
Yeah, and now even though she's gone, I go to that space that she gave me. I have that awareness. She gifted me that energy space of that communion. And it's like, oh, there it is. Yeah. You know, and I take myself to it whenever I recall. Or, Viv Adcock, Access Consciousness Certified Facilitator. Thank you so much. Conscious Horse, Conscious Rider, Talk to the Animals Facilitator. Well, we're going to have her up here at some point, guys. Watch this space. And thank you so much.
Hey.
You're such a treat. And by the way, you're welcome up here before you do these classes. Just come and play.
Come and play. Let's swap bars one day and see what contribution we can be to the land and to the animals around you. Definitely.
That would be so beautiful. Yeah. All right. Thank you
for asking the question, Fiona.
And
for being you.
Thank you.